Tonight, we revisit a topic which has divided the Edge media forums for months. Dozens of pages of claims and counterclaims, all about the subject of chemtrails. Those lines in the sky which many say are nothing to worry about, just something you would expect from a combination of airplane exhausts and changes in temperature at different altitudes. However, what if they are more than this? All part of a huge gamble to combat climate change, total geoengineering of planet Earth based on misinterpreted data and flawed science. But what if those behind this know exactly what they are doing, and it's all part of a grand scheme to change the evolution of humankind? They wouldn't do that, would they? Let's find out as we go on the Edge. Good evening, my name is G, AlexG, and tonight we are live, which means we need your interaction and input. And here's Melissa to tell you how.
Thank you, Alex. Text in on 86686, type the word EDGE, leave a space and then give us your questions or comments. Standard network charges apply, and I'm standing here ready to take your call.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Well, my guest tonight is French-born Belgian national and now living in Berlin, Germany, Marc Juncker. Marc, welcome to the show. Now, a little extract from your CV here. Civil aviation examiner, a Belgian world wine master, CEO of an agricultural company, and lecturer in climatology.
Former lecturer.
Former lecturer, okay. In the past tense, I shall put that.
Yeah.
So at what point in this varied career did you realise the Earth was in trouble?
Well, during the examinations, I always take the same legs, for example, between Ostend and the beacon of Coxey. And when you're flying always the same legs, you see the Earth changing. So I've seen the Earth changing, turning brownish.
Right.
And when you look from an eagle's eye, for example, at 4,000 or 5,000 feet, you see things differently than somebody who is living somewhere in the city.
So flying at that sort of height, you're actually able to see the changes over a period of time. Certainly we'll have some example photographs on that over the course of the programme. You've coined a term called terroir, which is terroir, sorry, T-E-R-R-O-I-R, and of course it's the war on terroir, which you were describing to us tonight. So what sort of people and organisations are involved in this war?
Well, let's first talk about, very short, over terroir. It's a trendy French word coming from viticulture, where you can actually taste the soil in the wine, but it's much more complex. It's a combination, a unique combination of climate, geology, what you're using for biological material, and very important, it is the human hand, the human input. And the human input makes that you have something decent and to eat or to drink or to smell, or something that is crap. For example, I give the antithesis of terroir. My wife asked me once, Mark, bring me a tomato. And I came with a glass of water, because 95% of a tomato is water, so why bothering about the other 5%?
Right.
And terroir is indeed manipulated in many ways, because it changes over time. Well, the perception of, let us say, sugar that they introduced in the food, that was actually the Coca-Cola revolution. The American troops, the Allied troops, brought it into Europe during World War II, changed our perception, you see? So when you manipulate it, you can make money out of it. I give a very striking example of manipulation of terroir. We had the humanitarian aid after the Haiti earthquake in January 2010, and there Monsanto gave a gift of 475 tons of genetic manipulated seeds
to the Haitian people.
Yeah, but this is not a gift because they can collect royalties. And
really?
Of course. It's all about, you just have to follow the money trail in those things. And actually those plants do not produce seeds as well. And in many places on this planet, the only wealth that people have, that is the seed that they are collecting. And then we have the industrial companies just taking it, grabbing it away and making those people extremely poor. And they're doing this on all levels, manipulating our terroir.
And I've heard you use the term the broccoli revolution. So what do you mean by that?
Broccoli Revolution is a British company. It's called Bioscience, who tried to patent broccoli. You see,
the natural.
Broccoli, you know what they want to do here in this world is to patent everything. You cannot patent sand, for example, but if you can make the synthetic counterpart of it at that very moment, you can say, well, it's mine. I know they're already trying for natural substances to own it.
Right. Yeah. And I've got written down here Obama's Executive Order 13544 in June 2010. So how does this fit into the concept?
Well, this is an executive order where they allow to radiate food.
Right.
Yeah, you see.
So does that actually sort of take away the nutrient value and change it?
I have no details about it, but I know in some mineral waters they go to a tunnel where they use radioactivity to kill all the germs in it.
Right. But
I won't give some advertising for those.
No, absolutely not. No. And you also mentioned in your various presentations about the fact that we've mentioned Monsanto and the fact that their former employees turn up in the American FDA and
of course,
EPA.
this is the lobby work.
So all of this is sort of interlinked and causing this war to perpetuate and increase in its impact. And again, I do know that you mentioned the traditional herbal medicinal products, THMPT action, which has been taken in Europe, which has an effect on all this as well.
Well, that means that when you are using traditional herbs, not all of them, but some, that you actually have to do the same acceptation process and the same red tape as a drug. Yeah. You see, the pharmaceutical industry is desperately trying to get hold on everything that is natural, and they introduced it on a very specific day. It was April's Fool Day, so they have a lot of humor, those guys, you know.
Yeah, and it's you're the fool if you don't actually notice what they've done. And again, we've got the mention of biofuels. Now, this is something from a former career I'm quite aware of, that this is turning over prime farmland for use in manufacturing an organic fuel. But of course, this has other knock-on effects.
The agenda is totally different when you are using, let us say, land for biofuels. It cannot be used for something else.
Right.
So that means you are actually manipulating food prices.
Right, and this is manipulating it upwards.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, and that's to the benefit of the people producing the stuff. Okay, and another thing I noticed was you talk about the privatisation of water supplies by multinationals. So this is happening worldwide, where the water is going into private hands and being sold on.
Especially in Africa and in South America.
Yeah.
So people without money,
that life force is not getting through to them because they're having to pay with money they haven't got.
And the next thing you have to pay is air.
Is that coming down the line then, do you
I don't
think?
know. And when you go to Tokyo, you can already buy small things to have a little bit of clean air.
Crazy stuff.
Oh,
Crazy.
yeah.
Goodness me. Well, we've got some images to illustrate the war on terroir. Let's have a look at image 213 then. Now, can you talk us through what we're actually seeing on this image here?
Oh, that's a very interesting image. I was in South Africa in the year 2007 and walking through the vineyards, and there was a kind of stormy wind coming in. It's called the Cape Doctor.
Yeah.
And it only lasted for 10 minutes. But after those 10 minutes, about 50% of all the grapes were just ripped off. They were just lying. And only 1 or 2 years later, I understood what was happening there, because the calcium balance of all those plants has been disturbed, and calcium is very important for the integrity of your membranes.
Yeah. Well, we all know about calcium and bones, so it goes wider than that in the body. Yeah. Goodness me. So these are examples of, I mean, are you saying this is man-made, or that this is a result of mankind and what they're doing?
It is certainly a result of mankind. So we have been using industrial agriculture. And industrial agriculture, I know why they introduced it. We have to go back to 1815 when Napoleon destroyed the whole of Europe.
Yeah.
And then we had to rebuild everything. And we had the Industrial Revolution in the UK. It was the only country that was not occupied by Napoleon. And we had then also an agriculture revolution, and that one was by German, by von Liebig. And he introduced the NPK fertilizers.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but for example, if I gave you tomatoes tonight, salad of tomatoes.
That's very nice of you, thank you.
But I give it tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, it comes out of your ears. And that's what we're doing with plants. So that means the basis it is operating is always getting narrower and narrower. And what you are doing, you're just attracting, we call it bugs and insects.
Right.
They are not bugs. They are actually the cleaners of nature. They have antennas.
Right.
And they just get all the signals of rotting, and they come. And how did industry react on that? Well, very, very, very easy. They just introduced pesticides and herbicides, and you're creating a graveyard spiral with that. And after 1945, they introduced bigger tractors and bigger ploughing machines. And then we have the soil mineralization. That means that your soil is turning into stone. It's clinically dead.
Stone. So, I mean, you're effectively saying there's nothing in there for the plants to feed on.
No.
Right.
No. And I guess we are now hitting the final border of agriculture. This is what's happening right now.
So this is the end game.
There's nothing such as an end game.
Right.
And this is a very important aspect of terroir. I mentioned the human input.
Yeah.
We are a major factor, but terroir does not take the humans into account. That means that the planet, in some way, always evolve to a new equilibrium.
Yeah.
And it can be an equilibrium with us on board, or without us.
Us out of the picture.
We are now in this time scope. We have to make decisions, and we don't have that much time left.
Now, I think this leads nicely onto image 206, which we just plug that one up.
Oh, that's our friends of BP.
Yes, this is the Gulf of Mexico, I believe. So, how does this fit into your conjecture?
This is just another manipulation that they are doing.
So you're saying this was deliberate?
No, I don't say it's deliberate. Right. The aftermath, how they handled it, was very deliberate.
Right.
We have actually a group of ordinary robbers trying to rule this planet for the sake of money, and that's the only thing they want to do. They have their agenda, and this is what I'm trying to do right in my life, and say, guys, there is another way, and there are solutions, and very easy solutions. We actually can heal this planet in about 80 days.
And this is the title of your forthcoming book,
Yeah.
which is How to Heal the World in 80 Days.
Yeah.
And when you say that, do you believe then these robbers, do you believe that they are deliberately avoiding the information that could actually save the planet in that?
No. We have to have a very closer look at what we call the global elite.
Right.
Those are industrial groups, bankers, and they maintain excellent ties with the former aristocracy. They choose the politicians that will implement their agenda.
Right.
For example, Tony Blair was invited at the Bilderberg Summit a couple of years ago, and to show, I will do everything you say.
So literally, he waved his white flag.
Yeah, and there is something very curious. The elite, they know a lot more than we expect.
Right.
And the second thing, they will only introduce new technology when the owner's rights can be transferred in a proper way.
Okay. We'll hear more after this break. Welcome back to On the Edge. I'm AlexG. We're talking about chemtrails in general, but basically the science around it and the activities around it. So we're broadening the whole topic out for you. And here's Melissa with some of your comments.
Thank you, Alex. We're hotting up tonight, I feel. Vinny in Kent says, I texted the BBC News many times re chemtrails. They replied that these were planes checking air quality. Carl in the Wirral says, the USA say aluminium strips are released at high altitude in order for Weather Bureau to track wind patterns more easily.
Oh, right.
Denise says, last night at 12:30, as I looked at the constellation of Orion, there was a chemtrail right across the belt of Orion. And she also says maybe the last Bond film wasn't so far-fetched, with a villain who was stealing water from South American nations.
Quantum of Solace, that one.
Yes.
Yes.
And Steve in Cleveland says 25 planes flew over North Yorkshire in the space of an hour last month and the month before. It looked like a mad dash to cover the sky.
I think this is the thing. We have people used to the idea of contrails because they see those behind a plane and get very confused or very belligerent that it can't be anything else that these planes are actually putting out. Now, I'm sure we'll sort of get round in due course tonight to talk more about chemtrails, but I think the way you look at it is in the whole, if you like, for the whole thing, and chemtrails as part of something much, much bigger and grander. And this is your war on terroir, as you say, trendy French term, so we're going continental a little bit tonight.
When I'm talking about chemtrails as an examiner, I'm not even allowed to speak about that because it doesn't exist in aviation nomenclatura.
Right.
But, now for the buts. I checked a few things out myself, and there have been many attempts as soon as we had airplanes to control the atmosphere, you see. And the MOD, so your Ministry of Defence, already admitted that they sprayed the armed population in Wales and Devon between 1940 and 1979.
Really?
With
39 odd years?
Yeah, it was, just a second, the Daily Telegraph of April 21st, 2002. But they said it's no harm. So what they probably want to do is to check contamination patterns and then use it over Germany probably. It never happened.
Right.
A very curious thing is that in those days, barium was listed in the Royal Air Force, by the Royal Air Force, as a chemical weapon. So it's not that less. And let us say seeding the atmosphere was also used in a very, very different way. For example, with the bombing of the German city of Hamburg with window stripes. So that means small stripes of aluminium for just blurring the German radar. And
I'm with you.
40,000 casualties anyway. And we go on further with that. During the Vietnam War, we had Operation Popeye. And there dumped masses and loads of silver iodide in order to trying to postpone the monsoon.
Really?
Yeah. And they postponed it by 1 month, and it has been listed as one of the first major successes of geoengineering. And to suit the military, they wanted to bug down the Viet Cong in their supply routes. Another example of, let us say, geoengineering is after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. The Russian Air Force, it was the Soviet Air Force then. They bombed actually those clouds in order to try that they don't reach Moscow. But this came at the expense of many casualties in White Russia and Belarus. We don't know how many people died, but there are a lot of cancer cases over there. And when people ask me, do chemtrails exist? The only answer I can give, there are man-made cirrus clouds, those high clouds, are not listed as such by the World Meteorological Order. They are just listed as cirrus clouds. So on that level, something is already wrong. And I found one very interesting research paper. It's called Modification of Cirrus Clouds to Reduce Global Warming. It has been published by Mitchell and Finnegan, released October the 30th, 2009, the Desert Research Institutes. And there they want to seed the atmosphere with a mix of metallic particles to create a screen to reflect sunlight, or maybe UVA, UVB. And it has to do with the
range of things as well.
And very interesting, through the exhaust of airplanes, and they just say we have the technology available.
So even if people are able to, in their own mind, dismiss the fact that chemtrails they see out the back of planes are just these contrails, condensation trails, the fact is the research and the science is already in place for them to see the atmosphere, and we have examples of them having done so.
Climate, ecosystems, weather modeling is, according to this global elite, the business of the future. When you can provide an ecosystem on demand, it's very fine for them. And the climate business is booming, really.
It's interesting you should say climate business,
because it is a business.
You said earlier follow the money in terms of that. And I saw some research which said that in terms of commercial airliners, the fares they are charging for a flight on a commercial airline, these fares can hardly even pay for the fuel that is being expended by the plane.
Well, I paid 35 euros for my flight from Berlin to here somewhere.
To London,
It was to Brussels first, but anyway. And the plane was not fully booked as well. So when I make the calculation myself, I don't have to answer that question. Maybe you can ask those guys, as Branson and Michael O'Leary, how they are break even. This is not my problem. But I made that calculation myself.
And anyone could do that as well. They could think about number of passengers on the plane, cost of the fuel, amount of fuel being used by the plane, and then just see if the figures stack up. It's that easy. They're going to say they're going to be making the money on what they sell on the plane.
I'm not insinuating that chemtrails exist. No, I'm just saying it's strange. How
do you bridge the gap between what you're bringing in from commercial fares on an airliner and the actual running costs. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can with cargo, but I don't. There was no cargo on my EasyJet flight.
Okay. Well, if we move back into the war on terroir, because I certainly want people to see these pictures that you've brought along for us. This is image 211. Now, this is over the Bavarian Alps. So can you tell us a bit about this picture?
That's a picture I took in 2007, and it really shows actually a very strong temperature inversion.
Right.
And what I've seen there is that fine dust particles are trapped in the lower atmosphere, and that the planet is slowly but surely suffocating itself. That's why I took that picture.
Goodness. So, I mean, in terms of what we're actually seeing there, you're making a direct link that mankind's activities is creating that scenario in the Alps then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we have a small talk about the ozone hole layer? Because
well, yeah, I mean, certainly we've got some images on this because to the majority of people watching this programme, they'll be saying, oh yeah, I heard about the ozone layer hole years ago, but that was fixed, wasn't it?
Another joke.
Oh, right.
Ah,
So
right.
They're having us along on that one.
What's the ozone hole problems? First of all, the ozone hole, the ozone layer, is a protective layer only 6 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah? And it prevents us from bombardments from UVA and UVB radiation. That's one thing. And that causes blindness and skin cancer.
Right. Yep.
A former American president, how was it he called again? Ronald Reagan.
Oh,
yes,
yeah, Mr. Reagan.
There's no problem. We just issue raincoats and sunglasses, and the problem is fixed. And then it was only discovered, the ozone hole, by 3 British scientists in 1985. And then we had a couple of years later the Montreal Protocol. They say, well, let's ban CFCs. So that's
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've got images to put this in context. So if we have a look at image 209, so this is us looking at sort of the ozone layer being saved, and we've got some graphs here. So can you take us through what those graphs tell us?
Let us have a quick look at the right lower bottom.
Bottom right, okay.
Yeah, bottom right.
Yep.
And you can see that the CFC's levels have not declined. They're very much stable.
Right.
And there's an official answer for this, that it takes 20 years to get them in the upper atmosphere.
Okay.
But I have a small problem with that.
Okay.
Because CFC is 4 times heavier than air.
So how does it get up there?
That you have to ask the military.
Okay.
And I came to the conclusion that this is the net result of 212 atomic explosions. And it's
212?
That's since 1945.
Right, okay.
So a lot of CFCs are released over there. And yeah,
so
it started on somewhere in July 1945 with Operation Trinity. It's a nice name. They always have nice names for those things.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer and Einstein, it's really the summum of incompetence what they did there. They didn't know when they detonated the bomb if the cycle would stop or continue and blowing up the whole planet.
Right.
And they just, Truman said, okay, well, let's do it. And then in 1958, they had Operation Starfish Prime, it is called, detonating 3 H-bombs in the Van Allen belt, which is very important for this planet. Yeah?
Right.
And they had
this is out in space.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that they always say is the big problem and the big barrier about going to the moon, that you have to pass through the Van Allen belt.
Correct. And they had a motto. They were just saying, first we research and then we destroy. Very nice. And I was very curious when on one of my flights I took a Geiger counter with me.
Yeah.
And
to measure radiation.
yeah, I couldn't turn on the sound when we were at cruising altitude because all the other passengers would run scared.
Okay.
Because we had 300 times the normal radiation down sea level. So anybody using a Geiger counter.
So at that height,
and
they're
they're telling
300 times higher radiation levels.
And the official version is it is cosmic radiation.
Right.
I won't say it is correct or not correct because we cannot measure it before the year 1945. All measurements have been made after the first atomic bomb have been detonated.
Right.
And that is what they don't want to tell us. We have a very big problem on this planet. And if things go further as we are heading now, by 2060, there is no ozone layer left.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Goodness me.
And maybe you understand why they use geoengineering is actually changing deck chairs on the Titanic.
Right. Literally, we're sailing ahead full speed.
Oh yes,
stage.
we already hit the iceberg.
Yeah. But we're motoring on. Okay. If I just pull up the graph again, if we have a look at 209 again, perhaps you can just sort of talk us through sort of the other couple of graphs there.
Yeah. We have the CO2.
That's top left.
That's top left.
Yeah.
And this is also very, very hot topic. But I don't think the CO2 problem is not a problem. It's actually again fraud. And they're not speaking about methane.
Right, which is our one bottom left.
Yeah. It's the emission of by animals and humans and so. And they don't speak about that for the sake of.
Right. Yeah, because that does make the life cycle a little difficult if you're going to kill poor old Dobbin and Gertrude the cow.
And there we come that the CO2 business. It is really a business.
And then we have nitrous oxide going up at the top right as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are increases, but again, if we take this into context, the Earth can survive most of those, but
the Earth will survive certainly. That's no problem.
Yeah, and so the basic bottom line of this is that the idea that the CFC problem has been cured is completely wrong.
No,
it's still there.
It's still there, and it's just a giant cover up, and they are just keeping the public busy with the CO2 problem. And when you have, for example, the Kyoto Protocol, that's one of the biggest joke ever made. So Canada left the Kyoto Protocol 2 days or 3 days ago.
Very last few days we've had that Canada has actually pulled out of that, and it's hardly been covered in our country. I think it was an Indian website where I actually saw this mentioned. So it is one of these things that the information is out there, things are going on, and people need to be aware that something is happening. And we'll hear more about the ozone layer after this break. Welcome back to On the Edge. I'm AlexG, and you've been very busy on the texts. Here's Melissa to tell us more.
Thank you, Alex. Hat says, is there a sinister depopulation agenda? Is such a thing even possible? Maxie in Kent, I grow in my garden every year, and caterpillars that shoot thorns and black flies eat everything except the crops over the field, over the fence. Kent is mainly agricultural land, and farmers can't and won't listen, so what to do? How can we make a difference? Love growing in my garden, but it's disheartening. Stephen in St Helens, do you think that the honeybee deaths could be deliberate? Imagine if you specialise in GM seeds, which we would need if some man-made disease killed them.
Wow. Okay. Depopulation agenda, is this on the cards, do you think, or is that just speculation?
It's a kind of speculation from your part and from their part, I think.
Right.
Bill Gates had a CO2 equation,
Yep.
and one of the factors was P, and P stood for population. So it's
Right.
certainly a factor, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that there is a depopulation agenda.
So it doesn't necessarily follow that one connects to the other. The interesting comment about the wildlife being attracted to somebody's back garden but steering clear of the field across the way.
This is what I thought in the beginning. When you have a crop that is growing weaker, you attract predators.
Yep.
That is what's just happening because they just want to clean everything up. And they are not the enemy. They're just doing their job in the big cycle of nature.
Right.
The big companies, those are the culprits
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. And we always hear about honeybees here in the UK and the fact that they seem to be on the verge of extinction from what's being described. Is this all part and parcel of what we're seeing elsewhere?
Well, in Germany we have it as well. In Belgium, it's also. Yeah. I think there's much more going on than just genetic manipulation. When I see all those antennas of mobile telephony, all
Right.
those different providers, and they're actually microwave.
Right.
See, when you take an airplane as a passenger, you have to turn off your mobile phone before takeoff.
Right.
Maybe you should ask why. You know, those bees are pilots as well.
Right. So they're getting interference, and that's what's
and
causing the problem.
what's happening? They get interference, and they don't find their nest back, and they hive back, and they died of exhaustion.
Okay, well, we were talking before the break about the ozone hole, and it's one of these things that people think has been cured. So if I queue up image 204, again, this is coming back to your point about CFCs continuing to destroy ozone molecules in the upper atmosphere, but this is not something widely talked about, though, is it?
No, they put it somewhere in the shelf, the CFC problems. Because they always blamed the industry on freon that is used in refrigerators as being the fault of it. And so they abolished the freon in the Montreal Protocol, but they just really covering up the reason for it. It's military.
So what have we got here in this graph?
Well, when you see everything increasing, and what we have to do if we want to interpret those graphs, most of the time they are using moving average. For example, a moving average in Belgium will be from 1830, for example, till now. So that means you can prove anything and nothing. What I did in my calculations, I took the year 1980 as being the reference. And then you see really an increase in everything. And we're always talking about CO2, but there are a lot of other things going on right now.
And we can see there all the various chemicals there at the bottom. They're all increasing as well. But so you're saying that they're more dangerous than the CO2, are they?
Yeah, they are more dangerous.
I'm with you.
The thing is, you can make money with CO2.
Right.
And it's very easy.
Hence the carbon taxes that they talk about.
But it's extremely easy. You have the Kyoto Protocol. They say we are going to reduce the emissions by 5.4% based on the extreme polluting 1990 levels.
Right.
You have to know that 70% of all CO2 emissions come from plant world and animals.
Right.
Only 30% is human induced. When you take 5.4% from this 30%, you have a reduction of 1.4%, and they for this very small fraction of, they use billions of pounds, dollars of tax money.
Yeah.
And those things, and what they decided in the Kyoto Protocol has not to be renegotiated.
Yep.
Yes, so it's fixed for the whole treaty. The United States doesn't participate.
Yep.
China doesn't participate.
Now Canada doesn't participate.
And it is not based per capita. It is based on historic levels. So that means who gets the biggest bonus? The biggest polluter, of course.
Right.
And you can trade with that.
Yep.
You see, who has the biggest surplus? Or the biggest polluter.
And this is the whole basis of carbon trading.
And it is not even a reduction in CO2. They just smear it out in time. That's the only thing they do. So it's thin air, the whole Kyoto Protocol. And all what came later, for example, Copenhagen, I have here the net result of Copenhagen. Just a second. I have it here.
Yep.
Net result of Copenhagen, 6,500 negotiators, 5,000 journalists, 98 head of states, 140 private jets, 1,200 limousines, security personnel not included, and 40,485 tons of CO2 in the atmosphere. So those guys don't seem to bother about it.
They're not walking the talk,
and
are they?
They said it was the last chance to save that planet. And we had the Durban summit last week.
Yes.
Which they all, I listened to the news and I heard again the same hollow phrase, it's the last
chance,
dance.
the last best hope for peace and all that.
So they know more, those guys.
Yeah. Again, I just want to sort of cue up image 205, and again, this is just sort of, this is I think the best illustration of what we're talking about in terms of the ozone hole, and this is over Europe. So talk us through what we've got here in terms of what's going on.
That's the realistic projection what our planet is facing. There's something wrong if we decide to do that scenario. It is our choice. I think that planet here already went through such cycles, such dramatic cycles, and it is not the issue if we decide to start all over again, because time is, according to my opinion, not very linear. So that means 6,000 years in a cosmic plane, it's just 1 millisecond. But we have really the technology, and we have bright minds, just as you, that we can really make the difference here, and we have to do that.
And it's basically down to the individual to play their part.
Yeah, of course.
And I mean, it's all about, I think your phrase was, the human race declares its own independence.
Yes.
So what do you mean by that?
First of all, we need to know how humans are, what we really are.
Right.
And when we have a conception of a child, the heart is formed first. And it contains 40,000 brain cells. The brain is formed in a later stage. So I will call our species as heart beings, heart intelligence, and there is very, very, very strong evidence about that, because there is an American, it's called the Institution of HeartMath, and those guys, they know that technology, and they use that for their customers, and their customers, they are the US military, CIA, NSA, NASA, those guys, and it doesn't work well when you look to the news. What's happening in Iraq, and so it doesn't work very well. The most idiot word I ever heard in my whole life is military intelligence.
Yes, it is like that. And as I say, we've got this plethora of images that you brought along for us, and certainly, I mean, it's just getting the idea of how much the Earth is hurting, I think. So if we have a look at image 201, now this is the Aral Sea in 1985. So we get a scale of the operation there in terms of what goes on. And then if we jump now to image 203, this is what happens when we compare that site to an image of what's going on there in 2009, and there we go. So literally, that's the same area. Can you talk us through specifically what we've got there?
Well, first the good news. Since 2009, it expanded again by 10%.
Right.
So that's how we are approaching this material. This is specific. It has been. This is the fault of the Soviet government. They put some dams in it, and it evaporated. But there's something much worse going on this planet. I was talking about the mineralization of the soil. Yes. So that the soil turns into rock due to extensive industrial agriculture. So that means when it is raining, it is not going through the soil. So that means that ground level, the waters are dropping dramatically. In Germany, in the Rhine region, we had a drop in a couple of years of about 30 meters. So that's basically what's happening. I can tell you, if they're waging war those days for oil, I know that what's the next conflict, it's about water. And we already had a conflict. The whole Darfur in Africa conflict was not about Christians against Muslims. It was just about water.
Goodness. So you actually foresee that that's where the next sort of war incident, everything like that is going to be the next commodity that we're talking about.
No, wars are very profitable for banks.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be that way. That's why we developed a whole set of solutions.
I'm with you. So we've covered loads and loads of topics here in a very whistle-stop tour of the landscape, if you like. In terms of, and we're saying about people being the key themselves to being able to change the world in 80 days. What can anyone watching this program do, briefly, in about a minute?
In 1 minute.
In 1 minute.
I can save it in 80 days, but maybe not in 1 minute. First of all, we have to change the way we are looking at things. We have to remodel science.
Right.
I'll give one very, very small example, the gravity theory of Newton. It's totally wrong, because they say we have the low and high tide due to the gravitation of the moon. But why do we have twice high tide at the same day? And when we have in Brighton high tide, then we have in Sydney low tide at the same time. You cannot explain the rings around Saturn with that theory, and neither you can explain why the moon is circling around. It's just one example. We need to develop mathematical, not only models, that are universal. That means they are valid in every corner of the universe. And all the technology is available to do it. We have the computers and we have the bright minds to do it, but science is not prepared to do anything on that.
Marc, well, thank you very much for joining us. Just leaves me to say, don't forget to spread the word about subscribing to Edge Media Online so that people can receive it on any compatible computer around the world, local censorship willing. Get them to find out more at www.edgemediatv.com. Subscribers will have access to more exclusive features as they come live. Advertisers, now is the time to get involved with this channel. An enthusiastic niche audience awaits news of your product, venture or service at fantastically low rates. And so now it really is under the radar around the world. You've been on the edge.